A lot of the great sages of India, they taught us 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. was a time of great magic.
Right.
I think it's called Brahmamurti.
Yeah.
So I started applying it, and I started realizing it was just a complete game changer to be up while the rest of the world is asleep. Gave me time to meditate and to pray and to exercise, and just became a part of my life.
Thank you so much for doing this with us, Robin. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Karishma. Great to be with you.
Yeah. How are you doing? How are you liking Bombay so far?
Oh, I've been to Mumbai many times.
Yeah.
I love it. I always love it. And I always love the food, the people, the energy of the city.
Yeah, it's a great city. So a very interesting question. In the recent 3 to 5 years, a lot of people are talking about waking up early, waking up at 5, doing the whole, meditation, exercising, all of those things. But you spoke about it 26 years ago. How did that come about? Where did it stem from?
So I was a litigation lawyer in my early 20s, and I was struggling. So I started searching for modalities that would help me be happier, more energetic, more alive to life. And one of the themes through a lot of great lives was they would get up early.
Yeah.
And if you look at Nelson Mandela, even on Robben Island, he was there for 18 years out of 27 years of imprisonment. He would get up at 5 a.m. and he'd run on the spot. So for anyone who says, oh, I don't have enough time, I mean, here was a man who was in confinement who still got up at 5 a.m. So Tim Cook, for example, Michelle Obama, and even a lot of the great artists, a lot of the great sages of India, they taught us 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. was a time of great magic.
Right.
I think it's called Brahmamurti.
Yeah.
So I started applying it, and I started realizing it was just a complete game changer to be up while the rest of the world is asleep. Gave me time to meditate and to pray and to exercise, and just became a part of my life.
Yeah. And what were you like prior to this epiphany that you had as you were researching these people? What was your childhood like? Like, what did you ever foresee talking about such important lifestyle changes? And what was your lifestyle like when you were a kid?
Oh, I think, normal lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like play in puddles.
Yeah.
What
was life like?
I don't know if I had a lifestyle.
Yeah, not a lifestyle.
Age 5. What was my lifestyle? Like, I was very calibrated.
Yeah, meeting one.
Yeah, exactly.
What was your life like? What was your childhood like?
Well, I come from very, very humble beginnings. My parents are immigrants. Grew up in Canada in a small town. And it was a great childhood. I have wonderful parents. My dad's from Jammu, Kashmir. Oh, wow. My mother grew up in Nairobi. Yeah. My dad was a family physician for 54 years.
Wow.
And when he retired, I said, Dad, why were you a family physician for so long? And he said, because my patients needed me. So great childhood, great parents. My dad was the philosopher in the home. He filled the house with self-help books and books of wisdom. Taught me a lot of great philosophy. Used a lot of great quotes. On the refrigerator, there was a Rabindranath Tagore quote that said, spring is past, summer has gone, and winter is here, and the song that I meant to sing remains unsung. And the home was filled with books. And so I think a home that's filled with books is a great home.
And growing up, what did you think you would become? Or what did you want to be? It's one of the most common questions that are asked to kids growing up. What do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, I think I wanted to be a musician, actually.
Okay.
So, but I never really thought I'd be a writer. And then I decided to be a lawyer. And I became a lawyer, but was, you become a lawyer and the world tells you you'll wake up and you'll be happy. And everything will be great and you'll be a success. So I followed the scorecard of the world, and I became a lawyer, but I was very unfulfilled. I'd wake up every morning, look at the bathroom mirror, and I didn't really like the man that was looking back. So that led me down this journey into studying, what makes a great life. Yeah.
But you still decided to pursue law and continue with it for a while, right? So at what point did you feel like, okay, I want to write this book, or, I want to kind of explore something that's not litigation? Was there a defining moment, or was it just like a series of events that led up to that point?
Yeah, I think the universe will lead you if you let it. And for me, there wasn't one blinding epiphany where I said, I'm going to leave the law. For me, it really was just a step by step. I decided to explore. Then I made a big change in my life.
Yeah.
After learning to meditate and to journal and to pray and to eat properly and to manage my mind in a completely different way. And as I started doing this growth and this healing day by day, I started getting more energy and more clarity. I think in many ways, we're born into genius, we get resigned into mediocrity. When we're kids, we have a sparkle in our eye and we know our truth and we love, right? We're taught to hate and we trust our instinct over our intellect. And then as we go through life, we get these layers of doubt, fear, and disbelief that block us to who we truly are. So that's the great thing about personal growth. Every day, the more you do it, there is an immediate payoff every day. Doesn't mean your life is going to change in a day.
Yeah.
But every day you do a prayer, or every day you meditate, or every day you get on the treadmill, you let go of who you were yesterday. And if you do it day after day, you lead yourself to a transformation. So to answer your question, it wasn't one blinding moment that caused me to leave the law. It was step by step. I discovered who I was again. And as I did it, more and more growth, I became more confident in trusting my instinct. And that led me to this strange idea to write a book. I self-published it in a 24-hour copy shop. My mother was my first editor. People laughed at the title. It was called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And I started off giving the book to bookstores on consignment, which just means they wouldn't buy the books. I'd leave 5 books, and if they didn't sell, I'd have to pick them up. And I sort of love the word magical, but sometimes I don't. But it was sort of magical. I mean, all of a sudden, the book just started taking off around the world. Oh, in Israel, it's the 5th best-selling book in history. Oh, in India, it's this. Oh, in Latin America, it's top of the charts. And the book just started around the world through word of mouth. And it was a fascinating process.
So did you kind of give up the law and then focus on this simultaneously, or how did it, did you decide that I'm going to give up the stable career and write, or was it happening in a way that I'll keep this cushioning and write on the side? Which way did it go?
That's a really smart question, Karishma, because people often ask me, should I go all in, jump and hope the net is there, or should it be a hedged bet? Which, for me, what really worked was it was a hedged bet. So I stayed at my legal job, but I would get up I was just full of drive for this. I think when you find what you're meant to do, you just have so much energy.
It doesn't feel like effort.
It didn't feel like effort, and you just get out of bed at 3:30 in the morning with a fire in your belly. So that's all, I'm just reporting. And so I would get up very early and I'd work on the book. I had an Apple Mac. It's like a historical artifact right now. But I had an Apple Mac, and I would go to this 24-hour copy shop and I'd work on the book, and I'd be at the office by 8 o'clock. And then I'd finish and I'd work on it in the evening. And the book just started in some ways writing itself, and it was a labor of love. And so one day I was in a bookstore with my son Colby. He was about 4 years old at the time. And I asked the bookstore manager, can I sign the book? Because someone once told me if an author signs the book, they can't return the book. So I just signed the book every time I could. And as I was signing the book, I looked over and there was a gentleman in a green trench coat, and he was watching the whole scene unfold. And he came over to me and he said, oh, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, that's a really interesting title. And I said, thank you. I'm a lawyer, but this is my labor of love. I want to help a lot of people. I think I can. I'm a self-published author. And he said, oh, that's very interesting. Well, here's my card. And I looked at the card and it said Ed Carson, President, HarperCollins. And about 2 weeks later, they bought the world rights to The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari for the astounding sum of $7,500. And that just led me down this path. So
these practices that you imbibed kind of led you to these seemingly appearing coincidences? Or do you think that you become this magnet and all of these amazing things start getting attracted to you once you're in that alignment?
Well, again, honestly, I'm not just saying that. That's a very interesting and good question. And I don't want to sound too metaphysical. I think I'm a very practical person. I think in the 5 a.m. Club, for example, the Everyday Hero Manifesto, there's tactics that the world's most successful people are using for more energy, more creativity, more productivity, and a better lifestyle. And I say better lifestyle because I know you really like that word. I'm just kidding. But I do also believe that the more you reclaim your primal genius, what that means is the more you work through the programming that the world has sold you, the more you heal your emotional wounding. In the 5 a.m. Club, I talk about, everyone's talking about mindset. I think there's 4 interior empires. It's not just mindset. I say humbly. There's mindset, which is your psychology. There's heart set, which is your emotional life. We're human beings. Yeah. We have emotions. It's obvious. How can we neglect that? We have a physicality, what I call our health set. And we have our 4th interior empire, which is our soul set, our spirituality. And it's only when we work on those 4 interior empires that we really start to see great traction in our lives. And so when you work, anyone, when you do the mindset work through, let's call it prayer, meditation, journaling, reading, and when you do the heart set work through, it could be therapy, it could be journaling, it could be Reiki, it could be acupuncture, it could be massage, it could be journaling through forgiveness. When you do the health set work, great rest, exercising, time with nature, what I call the 2 massage protocol. And when you work on your soul set through giving, through prayer, through meditation, through trying to get to know who you truly are. And when you do that every day, let's call it micro growth, what starts to happen is you start to see I know it sounds philosophical, but it's true. Yeah. We start to see the truth more clearly. In the movie The Matrix, right? It's Morpheus says, well, the world has pulled the wool over your eyes. Well, that's what's happened to most people. We are meant to be healthy. We're meant to be happy. We're meant to be prosperous. We're meant to live great lives. It doesn't mean every day is going to be perfect. Yeah. But if you look at too many good people, they have fallen into the trap of thinking that people who live beautiful lives are cut from a different cloth. And there are also, a lot of people are victims. Yeah. I can't get up at 5 a.m. I can't read. I can't work on myself. That would never work. Well, that is the hypnosis that they have sold themselves about their limitation, if that makes sense. Right. And as you start to do the work I talk about in the 5 a.m. Club, and especially in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, and that's very much a book about the methodology of reclaiming your human power. Right. You start to realize that I can't, and you start to look at all your programming and you look at your weak habits, and you start to see that we see the world not as it is, we see the world as we are. Yeah. And the more we can see our victimhood, oh wow, I'm creating my lack of energy. Yeah. Wow, I'm coasting at work and taking the money, and if I'd give more value, there's a great chance I'd be promoted. Oh, I'm hanging out with the wrong people and their energy is bringing me down, and that's why I'm not a peak performer. As we start to see, I call it CBE, complaint, blame, and excuse. So it's a leap from CBE to APR, absolute personal responsibility. When you make that leap a little bit every day, great things happen. Yeah. So that long answer to your smart question.
I just mentioned before that I've been practicing this since the past 2 years, and I feel like once you kind of take the responsibility upon yourself, a lot of it moves towards you. And I've experienced that personally, that you don't blame the circumstance, you don't blame the other person, you don't blame the job, you don't blame the whatever you're blaming, and you start taking ownership. It kind of moves. So I was very interested to understand if that's what you think was driving all these opportunities towards you as well, because like you mentioned, you were a self-published author and you've photocopied this book, and then this massive opportunity is just drawn into your life. After that, what kind of spiraled in your life? Once this deal was signed and you passed on these rights, then what? Then how did you kind of exaggerate these learnings that you've understood at this point?
Sure. And just back to your previous point, I think what you said is it's important, which is you don't get lucky, you make lucky.
Yeah.
So I think there's almost two spheres. There's the worldly sphere, and in the worldly sphere, it's you create your luck. You assume personal responsibility. Yeah. You start planting seeds. Not every seed will become a flower, but you go out there and you're doing good work and you're serving people and you're falling, but you're getting up versus giving up. Of course, eventually you're going to get traction around your ethical ambitions. But the higher sphere is also, I think, heaven helps those who help themselves. Yeah. And so when you believe in yourself and you have faith in your dreams and your mighty mission and your mountaintop, the universe does help you. And so I think there's the practical reason, and then there's the spiritual reason. So how did my life spiral? Well, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari came out and it became this big worldwide bestseller. And it just led me to speaking engagements and writing more books, and I resigned from my legal position.
How long after did you resign?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I'd say maybe a few months after HarperCollins bought the world rights. And my thinking was simply this: every moment I'm in this office is a moment away from doing my dream. And so that's when I took the leap. Once I got the deal, it wasn't a big deal, the publishing deal, but it was, you know what, I'm just gonna do this. And so I started off as a completely unknown author. People laughed at me, doors were shut in my face. People treated me very rudely in bookstores. I remember walking in and, can I sign the books? Stand at the end of the line, we don't know who you are. Doing radio shows, people laughing at the title, laughing at me. But you know, the Japanese say it well, get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. And it's stunning what happens if we stay in the game longer than people think we should stay in the game. Most people give up on the first or second or fifth failure. Yeah. And I think you just need to stay in it for 1,000 failures, and that's where love comes in. If you love what you do and you believe in yourself, then what else would I do? Yeah. You know, so it just started growing, and I just kept on writing more books and giving speeches, and then social media came around, so I started shooting videos and getting on Instagram and on YouTube, and this is I think it's year 28.
Yeah, wow. And what was the reaction from your immediate support system when you decided to give this legal job up?
Do you mean my family?
Yes.
Okay.
Complicated that one.
My immediate support system.
Like friends, family, relatives call you.
Yeah, no, I'm just joking. Yeah. You seem like you have a great sense of humor. You know, I'm not an astronaut.
I'm trying to be very serious.
My immediate support system. No, I'm just joking. My family. My parents, for example, in the moment they were supportive, but you know, 10 years later they said to me, we were really, really worried.
Yeah.
Of course, right? Like any Indian parents, you've got a great education, you're a lawyer, and you're going to become a what? You're going to
write books.
You're going to self-publish books, you know, but they were supportive. Yeah. And my son Colby was, I mentioned it, he was 4 at the time. So he didn't have much say in it. And my friends were really supportive. They read early manuscripts of The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Yeah. And I just continued. I think it's really important for you to believe in you before the world believes in you, until the world believes in you. And I really do believe that instinct is more powerful than intellect. Yeah. The intellect is what the world has taught us, our books and media and parents and everyone. Instinct is the voice of our higher power. Yeah. And that's your higher power doesn't necessarily mean God or the universe. I believe we have a conscience. Right. I believe we have a source of wisdom within us that micro trauma and macro trauma and confusions and difficulties of life cause us to disconnect from. And so that's, again, prayer, meditation, reading, journaling, all the modalities I talk about in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, getting up early, the 5 a.m. club, 1 hour, 5 to 6, the victory hour, exercising, reflecting, and reading and growing, the 20-20-20 formula. You do that every day, you not only become more healthy, confident, stronger, productive, creative, you also start to hear your silent voice within. You also start to connect with who you truly are. So I think the more we can start listening to our instinct. My worst mistakes in my life happen when I listen to others. The best things I've done, and I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, the best things that have ever happened to me were when I listened to my instinct versus my intellect.
Yeah. So tell us, what are some of the mistakes that you think you've made, and how did you overcome?
Well, I've made little mistakes and I've made big mistakes. Some of my bigger mistakes were in relationships. But again, I believe in reason, season, lifetime. People come into our lives for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. So even my mistakes, I wouldn't be who I am. I'm not saying I'm any kind of a guru or perfect, but I wouldn't have whatever wisdom I have or love in my heart I have or bravery. I wouldn't have those things but for my mistakes.
Yeah.
So I've made mistakes in relationship, but those relationship mistakes that really hurt me are the same things that broke me open. Yeah. And when you get broken open, I mean, Rumi, the great Persian philosopher, said, keep breaking your heart over and over until it opens.
It's where the light comes in.
It's where the light comes in. Excellent. You're completely right. So you could say, well, it was a mistake, but the broken heart caused me to become deeper, and that affected my writing, and it reflected the way I treat people and the way I see the world. So I think we grow the most from our most painful experiences. And that doesn't just help us to become kinder, wiser, more humble human beings. I think it really helps us in our craft.
Yeah.
You know, whatever your craft might be. But what you write about, for example, or let's talk about a filmmaker. What a filmmaker does. What I'm trying to say is your art is formed with your relationship from yourself. And the deeper the relationship you have with yourself, the deeper you can go with your relationship with your audience. So I think anything that's going to deepen you is going to be very powerful for your art and your influence. I think about Nelson Mandela. My life changed when I stood in his prison cell. And he just, because of 27 years of confinement, he could walk in a room and change the room without saying a word. And I think that's the goal of a leader, but even a creator, to go so deep within yourself that people read your book or watch your movie, or you walk into a room and just by being there, you lift them up.
It moves.
It moves.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a twofold question. You mentioned mistakes, relationships. You went through a separation yourself and overcame that. So my first question is, how did you use these learnings to kind of overcome this part of your life, which I'm sure was painful? And the second part of the question is, what advice would you give to people who are going through the same thing?
Well, you're talking so specifically on the relationship.
Yes.
One of the best pieces of advice I got when I was going through it is, this too shall pass. Sounds so simple, but one of my mentors said, this too shall pass. And that was like a saving grace. And because when you're in it, you think it'll never end, but it passes. So how did I get through it? I just step by step every day. You know, what choice do you have? You have to get through it. Human being, we are so resilient. So you just go through it day by day, day by day. And how also did I go through it? I used it. I exploited it. You know, it's not just about getting through difficulty or tragedy. I think what the wise person does is you ask yourself, how can I exploit the pain to purify me so that I come out of this stronger and wiser and more of use and more creative and a better human being? And if you do it that way, I mean, Richard Bach said it very well, the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, what the caterpillar sees it as the end of the world, the master sees as the butterfly. And what advice would I have to people? It would be, if you're going through something really painful right now, just remember that a time will come in the future where you'll look back at it and you'll be grateful for it because it made you who you are. Second piece of advice I'd have is stay in it as long as possible, which is strange advice, but our human nature and society tells you if you're going through a painful time, job loss, illness, loss of a loved one, rush out of it. And here's the worst advice. Stay busy, escape, forget about it. That'll just suppress the pain. It'll come back to bite you in other ways. You want to stay in it and use it to deepen you.
Yeah, because most people want to make this period as short as possible.
That's exactly right.
Like they're looking for a quick fix, like slap on a Band-Aid and want to get through it.
Totally.
So what you're saying is that's a temporary fix. You have to let it go deep, permanent, and permanently let it fix and heal.
Yes, this isn't my line, but someone said the medicine is in the poison. And I'm a Canadian. The Canadian musician Alanis Morissette said, the quickest way out is in.
Yeah.
And I think that's very true. I think if you're going through a painful time, go into it, stay with it, feel the pain, learn from it, do the grieving, or, don't rush out of it. And it doesn't mean you don't do your job and function as a human being, but also, when are the times that we really go deep? It's when we're on our knees, not on the top of the mountain. When we're on the top of the mountain, often we don't go very deep. It's when we're in trouble and turmoil. It's like, is there a God? Isn't there a God? What's my purpose? What are my values? When do we learn to meditate and journal and pray and walk in the wilderness? And when do we read the deep books? Often it's when we're struggling, looking for answers.
When you're going through something.
When you're going through something, then we go, oh, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Oh, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Oh, we go very deep. And so I believe a well-lived life is a series of seasons. We have times in the wilderness, difficulties, and we have times at the top of the mountain. And if you look at the greatest men and women of the world, I think of Gandhi. I think of Nelson Mandela. I think of Martin Luther King Jr. These people suffered more than most people, but unlike most people, they used their suffering as stepping stones and they emerged as heroes. Right. We all can be heroic. That's why I call the book The Everyday Hero Manifesto, the latest book. Yeah. That's what it's about. It's like, it's not just prime ministers, presidents, rock stars, billionaires. We all can be heroic. Yeah. And it does start by using the modalities I talk about in the book and seeing the world from a different philosophy. And one of the different philosophies is, suffering can actually be a great source of growth and success.
Yeah. And I think that the mindset that all the industry greats or the people that you look up to once were novices and began the way you are is a kind of perception that now people are beginning to recognize. So once you kind of got through this phase and you went through, like you said, the ebbs and flows of the pain that came through, what was life like after? How have you used the suffering to create?
What was like after?
Yeah.
Perfect. Like I never have any problems now, never have a worried thought. I'm just totally zen, close to enlightenment.
Almost there.
No, I'm so far from it. That's what happens is when you come out of it, you live life. You're at the next level of your journey.
Yeah.
And then the reality is, I'm very far from where I want to be.
Where do you want to be?
I want to be someone who's just in total peace. Like I look at the great spiritual masters. And I look at Nelson Mandela too. Every picture after he emerged from prison, he's laughing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think he's obviously one of the world's great leaders. And most of my life, I teach leadership to companies like Starbucks and FedEx and Oracle and IBM, et cetera. but I think he was also a spiritual master in many ways. So where would I dream of being? Like, I think of the great spiritual masters who were in the world but not of the world. And I'd like to be at a place where even if the world was completely falling apart, I was still absolutely peaceful.
Yeah.
But I will say that I am dramatically, exponentially different from where I used to be.
Yeah.
So I think the path of leadership and personal growth in spirituality is the top of one mountain shows you more mountains to climb. And I think the entire path is you're always growing and you overcome something. Like I look at things that used to irritate me and they hardly irritate me now.
That's amazing.
Oh, I just look at so many things that would have made me feel insecure or disappointed or whatever it is. And I go, oh, like I don't feel anything. Like no trigger, no activation, no energy. And that's the power of personal growth.
Yeah.
Yet there are still so many things that I want to improve.
That's amazing. And what was your biggest or happiest fan moment? When you've written all these books, do you remember any one particular incident where you're like, oh my God, did that just happen? Like somebody came up to you and said you changed their life.
Well, I'm very extreme. I have an amazing readers. Like I'm talking about incredible readers who I serve and I work for. And I'm very, very grateful. And, in India, the fan base is so strong. So I'm grateful to hear a lot of things on a regular basis, but I've been traveling for about 3 weeks. I did 6 days of very deep training at an event I do. It's a small group. Usually the events I do are very large groups, but this was a small group of 31 people in Barcelona.
Wow.
And one woman, and very, titans of industry. And one woman came up to me and she said, you got me out of a wheelchair.
Wow.
And I don't know quite what that meant, but that really meant a lot to me. Like you got me out of a wheelchair, and that kind of thing you can never take for granted. And I think if you do, that's the beginning of the end. And then I went to Baku after Barcelona, and on the way back I was flying, and the flight attendant said, "Me and my wife, we read your books. You've helped us so much. And my wife just wrote her children's book." And then he went to the galley and wrote a little card to me. Yeah, and then I said, okay, well, give me your address and I'll send you some books. And he was just so gracious. So, yeah, I mean, means a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's real people here.
Yeah,
real people with hopes and dreams. And I think if any one of us can be of use to people, I think it's a good way to spend a life.
Yeah, it's an amazing way to spend a life. Have you had an I made it moment? Like, I've made it. This is where I made it.
Well, I in many ways, I feel the same way I did when I started out.
Yeah.
And I often talk to my partner, Elle, about this when we have our philosophical conversations. And I think it's a good thing that I still feel like a beginner, because it keeps me hungry and it keeps me trying to write better books and serve more. And, I still work really, really hard. So I don't really feel I've made it.
Not yet.
I don't really feel I've made it. And even from an author point of view, I look at some of the authors out there and I want to be a better craftsperson. So I think I put my heart and soul in the 5 a.m. Club and the Everyday Hero Manifesto. I had another nice compliment yesterday. Someone said, I can tell how hard you work on your books, especially the 5 a.m. Club. And that's because I did. Like that book, even like the little pieces of art in it and the models and the languaging, and then the Everyday Hero Manifesto, I wrote it in the pandemic over 16 months. Wow. And I really miss traveling. Now that I'm on the road again, I realize how much I love it. But the 2 years of not being able to travel, roughly 2 years, it allowed me to really become an author, an artist again. And I really loved that. Yeah. And I rewrote the Everyday Hero Manifesto probably 22 times.
Wow.
And I just wanted every word right, every model right.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel I've made it at all. And I think I think if you feel you've made it, you're on the path to obsolescence.
Yeah.
If you look at the real masters, the authors and the athletes, Kobe or Muhammad Ali, they don't feel they've made it when they become champions. It's like, okay, I just got the championship. What do I need to do to sustain it?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's 100% correct. Yeah. Okay, we're going to now ask you a couple of questions for our audience, like completely simplified, right? Things that most people ask because they don't understand from these models, these lenses.
Sure.
One of the highest number of questions that we get is on journaling. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? How do you journal? What's the first step? What do you do?
Well, journaling is a life-changing modality, and it's so simple.
Yeah.
And for hundreds of years, people have grown by opening up a journal and having a blank piece of paper and writing their thoughts on it. So how do you journal? You go buy a journal and you get a tool that people used to talk about called a pen. And the best time to journal is at 5 a.m. early in the morning. Yeah. I talk a lot about it in the 5 a.m. Club. There's actually a model called the journaling deconstruction. And you can do a few things. You can write gratitude. Sonia Lyubomirsky, one of the preeminent positive psychologists, has found that the happiest people in the world, they have deliberate gratitude. That's not once a year, but every day they write gratefulness. So in a journal, you can just write about what you're grateful for. And it's like the Persian proverb, I cursed the fact I had no shoes until I saw the man who had no feet.
Yeah.
So imagine every day saying, if you have 2 feet, I have 2 feet. I have 2 eyes. I have food on my table. And you just keep on doing it. I call it micro-gratefulness. Yeah. If you do that every day, that is a tool to reform your mindset. Yeah. And reverse hypnotize yourself for looking at negativity. You can also just freeform, like whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking. Here are my dreams. There's another tool I call it the pre-performance paragraph. Powerful. Habit researchers have found that when you have a pre-commitment strategy, there's a much greater chance you will follow through on the habit. So writing a paragraph about how you want to live the day ahead. Okay, I want to fast until noon. I want to be the most positive person in every room. I want to go the extra mile for my customers. I want to have a family dinner tonight. And tonight, in the evening, rather than surfing the internet mindlessly, I want to read a book for an hour. That little paragraph done every day dramatically increases your focus and your willpower.
Your intentions.
Your intentions, exactly. And your intentions are very, very powerful. Right. What else can you do in a journal? If you're going through a painful time, divorce, loss, illness, etc., write about your pain. I'm feeling really bad. I'm feeling there's no hope. I'm feeling I'm alone. I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling anger. Even a lot of us, we don't link peak performance and productivity to what I call heart set. Yeah. Yet when you think about it, it's the number one reason we sabotage ourselves. We have all these people we haven't forgiven, all of this suppressed pain. We read the personal development book, we read the books on forgiveness, but we get the mindset cognitively, we get the idea, and we wonder why we don't change. Well, it's because heart set, the second interior empire, we're full of anger, unforgiven, unprocessed pain. So in the journal, you start writing about those, even all the people you haven't forgiven. You write forgiveness letters to them, and you start to release that energy. As you release that energy, you're lighter, you're stronger, you have more energy, you're more creative, more productive, better performer.
Amazing. We have a lot of youth following us. They find meditating boring, or more often we get just fell asleep. How do I begin to meditate? That's like such a complex but yet simple question. So if you could answer that one.
Well, you begin to meditate by selling your phone. And I'm joking, but you know, you can change the world or you can play with your phone all day. You can't do both. Latest research says on an average day, we're touching our phone 2,000 times. So for anyone who wants to live a gorgeous life, I will say you've got to break free of the addiction to checking your phone for trivial things. You will never, when you're young, it's easy to think you're going to live forever. And I will just say this point blank because I want to be of service to people. The hours you waste every day looking at people's ab pictures or, the influencers who they're walking down steps in the latest fashion or whatever, you're never going to get that time back. And I will say very honestly, there will be a time in the future where you will pray you didn't waste that time. And so I would say, first of all, use your phone as a tool, not as your master. The digital devices are incredible we live in a world right now. I hear again, victims. Oh, I can't find a job, or I can't do this, or it's hard, or, help me, world, help me. Well, the world isn't here to help you. You have to help yourself. And we live in a world right now where with a phone, you can start a YouTube channel. With a phone, you can create an app that changes the world. With a phone, you can distribute value to billions of people. That's how easy it is right now. We shouldn't be complaining about a lack of opportunities. But what has happened is we are addicts. And I'm speaking generally, but we are addicts, and we are addicted to looking at things like that. So back to your question on meditation, I think we've got to free ourselves from an addiction to technology. And one idea is, I call it the 2 telephone solution. You buy one phone loaded up with all your apps, and you have another stripped down Spartan phone with just whatever it's called, a telephone, for mobile calls.
Pre-smartphone, yeah.
Right, a pre-smartphone. Yeah. That's what you have with you most of the time, and twice a day you check your loaded phone. So then where do you start? The people who say, well, I start meditating and I went to sleep. Yeah, they've probably done it 3 times, right? That's like saying, I want to be a chess champion, and I went to 3 classes and I'm not a champion, so I can't be a chess champion. You've got to stay with it. Stay with the process. University College London, any new skill, 66 days. Try meditating for 66 days. Because as I say in the 5 a.m. Club, all change is hard at first, messy in the middle, gorgeous at the end. Yeah. As you so it'll be hard at first because it's new. Of course you're going to fall asleep, and you're going to want to play with your phone, and you're going to want to escape it. Same thing, 5 a.m. But as you stay with it, it gets easier, you get stronger, your brain starts to change, you get to be a good meditator. But it's like a little kid, little kids fall, get up, stand, eventually we run. Same thing for meditation, and it's completely life-changing. But not only meditation, prayer, and visualization. Those 3 come together.
And how do you deal with distractions? All of those things, right, that you spoke about. Not just a phone, it's just so stimulating. Everything is so stimulating. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that? Because more often than not, we get asked this question, just how? How do you detach? Mm-hmm. How do you detach from things that are constantly in your face, whether it's ads, whether it's fashion, whether it's news, it's music, it's phones, it's new gadgets. Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
Well, you structure your environment to avoid distraction. So you don't have any notifications. Why do you need a notification? The apps are there to serve us. Why would you turn notifications on? So that way the app is basically interrupting you. Yeah. So turn your notifications off. The 2 telephone solution. I was just talking to someone at the hotel that I'm staying at, and he said, there was a famous screenwriter who would, when he was working on a screenplay, he'd book a hotel room for a month here at the hotel, and he'd come in the morning and he'd leave at the end of the day. That's how the pros do it. Yeah. So you structure your life so the world can't get you, so you do real work versus fake work. So the 2 telephone solution, work in hotel rooms, hide your phone for periods of time, turn your phone off after 6 o'clock, don't check email before noon. You just go and get used to not having your phone with you.
It just doesn't happen. You have to make it happen. You have to actively, consciously try to do these things, to not let them distract you.
Yes, and you're right, Karishma. People say, well, how do I do it? That's almost like a powerless question. It's and then they'll say, but I have to be with my phone. People will reach me. Yeah. No, you don't. Yeah. You don't have to be with your phone all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So now we have another segment. It's called Things About Me You Can't Find on Google. And you should just, hopefully they'll be on Google after this interview.
Okay.
Who's your favorite author?
Favorite author, Richard Bach, because of Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And I'd say Khalil Gibran because of The Prophet. And I'd say Marcus Aurelius, the Roman Emperor, because of the Meditations.
Amazing. Who's your go-to person?
Ultimately myself. I've got an incredible family, but I'm my go-to person.
Wow, yeah. What's been the most life-changing day so far?
The day I took the ferry to Robben Island in South Africa and stood in Nelson Mandela's prison cell.
The first thing you do when you wake up?
Drink some water.
Your biggest fear?
Unfilled promise.
What's your all-time favorite book that you would also recommend?
That's a great question. Meditations of Marcus Aurelius.
Your comfort food?
Here in India, naan.
Yeah.
I love naan. It's
Yeah.
like so thick. It's surprisingly thick and good.
If you could go back in time, what would you change?
Nothing.
Amazing. Okay, and now we're going to show you an old photograph
Okay.
of yours. And you have to
Are you
tell us-
kidding me?
Yeah, you have to tell us what was happening.
Oh, that's a great choice. So this picture was me in front of the house I spent, 15 years in. Very simple house. And I went back to this city. It was Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. I think I was visiting family. And I decided to go back to the house and just
wow.
look at it. And
Like your roots.
we look at my roots.
Yeah.
And it's just, I was surprised by how simple it was. And
Yeah.
brought back a lot of memories. That's me and my father. And what was I thinking then, or
What was going on?
what was going on? It was a summer's day, and this is the backyard of my house, and he was visiting, and we were just hanging out and having a great conversation.
Yeah. It was a good day.
It was a great day. Yeah, fantastic day.
Yeah. Amazing. And now the last questions. So between being an entrepreneur, doing all of these things, it's been a crazy year for me as well. Team has grown. It's been first time doing stuff like this. For me and everyone else, right? 3 lessons in leadership.
I would say, number 1, if people are laughing at you, you've probably got a really good vision, because the world was constructed by misfits, oddballs, and eccentrics that had these crazy ideas that were laughed at. So have a really big vision and trust it. And if people are laughing at you, continue. Second thing I would say as a leader is your job is to build more leaders. So really build a team. Like, the bigger the dream, the more important your team. So really build people around you. So important. And then the third thing I would say is, remember, leadership is not a popularity contest. It's not about being liked, it's about doing what's right. And you mentioned it's been a busy year for you, and it sounded like you're new at this, or
Yeah, it just happened. Yeah.
well, I just want to give you a sincere compliment. I mean, your questions, you're so curious. Your questions are excellent. You're extremely well prepared. Those things are very rare in my experience. So I'm just complimenting you, because it's really been a pleasure being interviewed, because you're asking me interesting questions that are thoughtful for me.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Yeah, the team has put a lot of effort into it. And
That's what a great leader does. That's great.
Thank you.
Great.
And the last question to close this: if you could go back in time and say something to the 25-year-old Robin who just quit his job, what would you say?
K.M.F, keep moving forward.
Wow, yeah, that's a great close. Thank you so much for the time. It's been amazing. And I felt like I was asking so many questions just for me. I didn't even look at the cards, because I just wanted to know more. And that's a great interview. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
My pleasure, Karishma.
Thank you. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon. Thank you all for being the best community, and I'll see you soon.
So when I met Saif, I acted really cool, you know, it was, I had to read with him and I was like, shit. But I didn't let that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the veneer, right? You had to, you couldn't, because I didn't want to lose that opportunity at any cost. If they thought I was nervous or that I didn't match up or something, then that was it.
Yeah. Like he was like, I don't want to lose this.
Yeah. And having said that, you know, you could have passed me opposite a tree. I've said this a million times before, and I would have given it my all even then, because that opportunity meant so much to me.